by the military-industrial complex.
It could be seen to move violently forward, violently forward, violently forward.
I'm just a patsy.
I've been there.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
You think about the Army and the Navy and the missions they run to protect the world, they run on SAP.
Well, you have done a really spectacular job. I guess pretty much everybody at this table is your customer, so
Exactly.
That's not so bad.
Exactly.
I want to congratulate
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
And we're back. It's automatic. I finally figured out how it works. Unreal. I've been doing this for, 2.5 years, and now, well, maybe StreamYard changed the software. But anyway, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the Duke Report. And today is Election Day in the United States of America, or Selection Day, as some people think about it. And I am happily unregistered to vote. And people like Mike Cernovich and Courtney Turner may criticize me for that. But I'm not sure that my vote has any real value. And I can tell you that I don't have any FOMO today. This is the first time that I've participated in an election like this where I've decided that I'm not going to pay attention to my component of it, at least my imaginary component of it, because I think there is a mindset issue, and I think that we can overcome the problems. I'm not black-pilled in any way, shape, or form. I do think that we can do something about our current situation, but I don't think that we can continue to believe that we can drive a car with a broken engine to the mechanic to get it fixed. So with that, I'm going to start today's show with an excerpt. This is something that paid members of the Duke Report can go take a look at. It's the beginning of episode 3 from the Palmerston's Zoo series. So I'll bring that up on the screen here, and I'll play this for a couple of minutes, and then I want to talk about that a little bit. And this is a setup. I want to talk about the Doge, or Doges, which are they are the leaders of the Venetian Republic, who are chosen by oligarchs. And so they serve at the pleasure of the oligarchy, and they can be replaced. But usually it's a position of power and trust. And there's a reason why I'm bringing this up, but without further ado, I'll just play this for a couple minutes and then I'll talk about it.
The Venetian Takeover of England, a 200-year project. It was one of the most well-known secrets of the British oligarchy that the model for the British Empire was Venice. Benjamin Disraeli, the late 19th century Prime Minister of England, let the cat out of the bag in his novel Coningsby when he wrote, "The great object of Whig leaders in England from the first movement under Hampden to the last most successful one in 1688 was to establish in England a high aristocratic republic on the model of the Venetian." William III told Whig leaders,
"I will not be a doge."
They brought in a new family on their own terms. George I was a doge. George II was a doge. George III tried not to be a doge. He might try to get rid of the Whig magnificos, but he could not rid himself of the Venetian Constitution. The well-known secret of all the Whig insiders was that the Venetian takeover of England was a 200-year project beginning with the break of Henry VIII with Rome and concluding in 1714 with the accession to the throne of George I.
All right, I'm going to stop there. And I want to point out that when William took over, that that the Venetian takeover of Britain was a 200-year project. That is, it was something that they had been working on for 200 years through infiltration, through taking over both sides, both what would be considered the liberal and the conservative mindsets of that country, and eventually installing their own king, William the Fourth from Holland, who became William the First of Great Britain. That had never been done before, and when you think about the whole idea of the divine right of kings and the fact that these oligarchs who ostensibly were in Holland at the time, but they hearkened from Venice, just decided that they were going to replace the government in Great Britain. We don't hear a lot about. I don't know how much you hear about it when you, if you live in Great Britain and you're taught history in school there. But that's kind of a bold thing. And one of the major points that is made in the Palmerston Zoo series that you can see either on Substack or Buy Me a Coffee if you're a supporting member of this channel, is that the king was installed, William was installed as a doge, and a doge is someone who serves at the pleasure of the oligarchs. That is, he can be replaced. And there have been different situations in the American presidency. There have been different situations in the British monarchy. Edward VIII comes to mind. I wonder whether or not Edward the Seventh decided that Edward VIII wasn't going to make it, and his entire, running away with an American divorcee, and palling around with Adolf Hitler wasn't something that was planned before Edward the Seventh passed away. So, why do I bring this up? I bring this up because somebody who's very involved in the election today is this guy named Elon Musk, and Elon Musk famously last year was a big promoter of this thing called Dogecoin. And ostensibly Doge is some kind of like weird pronunciation of the word dog. At least that's the way that my daughter explained it to me when she was in 8th or 9th grade. But this was a cryptocurrency that was worth practically nothing. And then Elon Musk blessed it, and it took off. And I think it's gone back to kind of nothing as a shit coin, as my friends who are into Bitcoin call it. But then I think it was yesterday or the day before that Elon Musk tweeted this out, which is that if he gets his own department in the government, he's going to, with Ron Paul, he's going to call it the Department of Government Efficiency, which is DOGE. So the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I think that it's interesting that the model for taking over Great Britain was Venetian. The Venetian model is based on the system of having a ruler known as the Doge. And Elon Musk is very into this kind of Doge concept. He continues to push it. And so I just wanted to I wanted to start off there with that, and then I'll add this, which is that the kind of trademark symbol of Great Britain is the lion, and the trademark symbol of the United States of America is the eagle, and the trademark symbol of Venice is a lion with eagle's wings. And so it makes me wonder whether or not if they're willing to wait 200 years to take over Great Britain, and it seems like they're about 250 years into the complete takeover of the United States of America, or as they look at it, the continent of North America, because they already control Canada and probably most of Mexico, then their takeover of North America is practically complete, and I do wonder whether or not what we're dealing with the lion of Great Britain and the eagle of the United States is just the kind of bifurcation of this idea, which is the which is the lion with the eagle's wings. So I'll take that off there. Yeah, Arthur says the theory fits. Yeah, I mean it may not be true, and I'm willing to. Yeah, Saint Mark. Oh, Thermostable brings up Saint Mark. My daughter sent me a video a couple of days ago. Maybe my producer can help me find it, which was on, I think it was a History Channel video or something that showed that Alexander the Great's, in St. Mark's Cathedral in Venice, supposedly in a crypt there are the remains of St. Mark. But there are British historians who believe that the remains that are actually in the crypt in St. Mark's Cathedral in Venice is Alexander the Great, because Alexander the Great's remains were moved when the Muslims took over Alexandria. So, and what I was thinking would be interesting is that if that is true, if it is actually Alexander the Great's remains are in the crypt at St. Mark's Cathedral, it would be interesting to be able to test those remains for poisoning to see if there's arsenic, because arsenic's a heavy metal that doesn't go away even after a long time. And because the theory that comes out of people like the LaRouche group is that Alexander the Great was poisoned by Aristotle, or at least Aristotle's folks. So, yeah, let's take a look at some comments here. Yeah, Arthur Stone says that it's almost an Oriental undertone to the traditional British oligarchy. Yeah, I think it goes way back. I think that there's a reason why the Atlantic Council and the Atlantic Magazine and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization are all called Atlantic. And that's because I think it goes back to Atlantis. At least that's where my theory leads me. Let me see. Arthur also says Venice was on the Grand Tour. And the Grand Tour was a tour of classical architecture. And isn't that Jeremy, who's Jeremy, the guy who's Clarkson? Jeremy Clarkson, doesn't he have a TV show called The Grand Tour that he does on cars? And aren't the highest saloon class of vehicle, those are called Grand Touring cars? So this all kind of like harkens back to Venice a little bit. But I wanted to switch gears to a certain point, and I'm still talking about Venice, but the first section of the Palmerston Zoo podcast is free. The first 2 episodes are free. There's 8 episodes, so if you like the first 2, you can become a member and you can watch the next 3. If you've never clicked on the free article button, I give 3 free articles away on Substack, so you can read 3 articles. So if you really want to, you could probably, and you've never done it before, you could watch the first 2 for free, and then you could collect the next 3 as free, and then that would give you 3, 4, 5, and then you'd really be on the hook for 6, 7, 8. But in any case, in the first episode, the first episode isn't really about Palmerston at all. It's about Parmenides, and what's interesting is that when I first, and it's written by Nancy Spanis, who's written many great books about Alexander Hamilton, and she was an editor over at Executive Intelligence Review for is that what EIR for a while. And what she talks about is the Parmenides paradox, and it occurred to me when I was getting my arms around what the Parmenides paradox is that it is very like what George Webb was talking about when I first met George Webb, when George Webb was saying it's all in the metadata, because what Parmenides said is that what you need to concentrate on in order to figure out what's going on is you have to concentrate on what is. And the thing is about George's saying it's all in the metadata is that George was talking about, well, you have to look at what is, and then build your constructs around what is. And so I don't come to the idea of democracy being fake or this entire thing being a school play lightly. For 7 or 8 years now, since I met George Webb, I've been constantly looking at what is. And then I look at what I'm told. And then I try to reconcile those things. And it's difficult sometimes because they don't make sense. The thing that my wife and I agreed on January 6th, as we were freezing to death on the steps of the Capitol, was that whatever it is that we were told about a wild time and all of those other kind of stories that we wound up being told that got us to the place where we met each other. And I thank God for the fact that I met my wife that day. But that things didn't add up. Things didn't make sense. And so you have to look at what is. I know that my friend Courtney Turner and my friend Mike Cernovich are all in, on the election. I know that my friend Curtis Yarvin is at odds with my friend Matt Ehret, and they have very kind of different worldviews. But I can tell you that I'm conversational with both of them, and I get along with both of them, and I understand what the stakes are. But I'm still trying to get my arms around things. And Curtis wrote something when he was in 2009 when he was writing Unqualified Reservations, I think it was called. And he started off with kind of a simple premise, which is that the Declaration of Independence has a premise, and that is that all men are created equal. And Curtis simply asked the question, what if they aren't? Now, I want to believe that all men are created equal, and in my heart of hearts, I think that we are all born with logos. And I think that that is the great equalizer, and that's the thing that makes us equal. And that's why I've been spending hours going through the Bible and going through Matthew and John this week, like verse by verse, and really trying to understand how those Christian values align with natural law, because I believe that there's a lot of natural law that is encoded into the Bible. And so I've been looking at that stuff, and I do think that there is common ground between all of these well-meaning people that I know, but I'm not sure that we're going to get there with an election. So I was going to switch gears here to some notes that I've got, which is I kind of wanted to just go over the strategies that the Venetians use in order to be able to affect change. And one of them is the dialectic. But the funny thing is about the dialectic is that the dialectic is not really a dialectic. The dialectic is a trialectic, meaning what the purpose of the dialectic is to get two forces to oppose each other so that you can come up with a third solution. And so you get one side that calls themselves communists, and you get a bunch of true believers recruited into there, and then you get another side and you call those people capitalists. Both are categories, as E. Michael Jones might say. They're categories that were, kind of made up by moral philosophers and Karl Marx. But the result, the reason that they create this dichotomy is because they want to come up with a third thing. And some people will say that's a tyranny or a dictatorship or fascism or whatever label they put on it. But Courtney Turner had an article. Cynthia Chung wrote a really good article this week, which I will pull up on her Substack. I just need to go find it. let me change. Okay, add to stage. Now I have to go find this window, which I don't see. Sometimes I have problems navigating. Let's say window. Did I find it? No. This is professional show business. You can see that window, but I can't see that window, so I need to go find that window. Here it is. I found it. I'm going to go to Cynthia Chung, which is Through a Glass Darkly, I think. Through a Glass Darkly. Except this is searching my feed. I'm still getting the hang of Substack. It takes a while. Here it is, right here. So, in this article, which is about this guy named James Burnham. James Burnham is a guy who started the neoconservative movement in the United States, but he started off as a really good friend of Leon Trotsky. And so you have to ask yourself the question, like, why would somebody who starts off a friend of Leon Trotsky wind up working with William F. Buckley in the United States? And I highly recommend this article. You don't have to be a paid member, I don't think, although I am subscribed. So I'm not sure if you have to be a paid member or not. But like I said, Substack will give you 3 articles for free if you want to try things. But in this article on James Burnham, she talks about how he started off with Trotsky and then he wound up changing sides, as it were, and then winding up being an editor on the National Review, of all things, right? The American conservative movement. And I started thinking about this thing as kind of what I call a road to Damascus moment, because Paul famously was a Pharisee and he was out there persecuting Christians. And then one day he saw Jesus on the road to Damascus and he changed his mind and went in another direction. But I was thinking about all of the kind of road to Damascus moments, people that and this is just off the top of my head, and I was thinking, well, Glenn Beck did that, right? And I remember, being one of the charter members, rushing to send Glenn Beck $5 when he left Fox News and started the Blaze. Tucker Carlson kind of started out on CNN, and now he's kind of a darling of the right. And again, the conceit usually is that somebody believes one thing and then against their type, they have a sudden revelation and then they're suddenly moving in a different direction. Candace Owens, she started off with something called, I think, Social Media Autopsy or something like that. And it was something that it was going to basically dox people who said mean things on social media. Ben Shapiro graduated from Harvard Law School, and then he came to Los Angeles. Well, he grew up in Los Angeles, but he came back to LA, and he famously went and interviewed a bunch of radical left-wing entertainment people, executives, and then wrote a book outing them, because they thought that the guy showing up with the yarmulke and graduated from Harvard Law School was just obviously a liberal, and he wasn't. And so this became again, this is a conversion. It's a perception of left, and then he moves to right. Russell Brand has done all kinds of weird, creepy things. And the creepiest thing, I think, is the book, the Pied Piper book that he published. And maybe my producer could find a picture of that. And now he's converted to Catholicism. Milo Yiannopoulos, another one Milo did a double. Milo is like a flippy floppy, because Milo started out as a gay Brit who then came over and was a Trump supporter. So he became a right-wing Trump supporter. He was calling him daddy and all this other stuff. And then when things went south for Milo, then he became a straight Catholic. So he's gone back and forth. So again, I don't know what you call a double road to Damascus moment. And then James Burnham is this guy, and James Burnham represents. He wrote a book on the managerial class, which falls pretty much in line with technocracy, and technocracy is famously a technocratic or a science-based way of ruling society, which very much seems to be what this is. That's what this looks like, technocracy to me. The Department of Government Efficiency. It's like, we're going to run the government in a very efficient way. You know, we're going to bring in science, and we're going to, the same way that we're landing rockets, and we're building electric cars and gigafactories. We're going to bring all these ideas into government. It's funny because. And I'm remembering this when when Barack Obama was elected in 2008, and Elon Musk was part of a program that Barack Obama started. That was the idea of Elon Musk in 2008 to start an entrepreneurs in residence program at the White House, and so when I worked for the Las Vegas Springs Preserve, the guy who was in charge of that project was a Canadian oceanographer named Francis Bailon, B-E-L-A-N-D. And Francis Bailon became one of the entrepreneurs in residence. And what they did is that they took an entrepreneur and they assigned an entrepreneur to a different department of the government, and they said, "Here, innovate this department." So the department that Francis Bailon was rewarded with, a Canadian, was the National Security Agency. So my wife is laughing. And so Francis Bailon went out and hired a consulting firm to help him innovate the National Security Agency. That consulting firm didn't actually have experience in the kind of innovation that Francis wanted to do. So they bought another agency in order to be able to innovate the National Security Agency. That agency hired another agency that hired another agency that hired another agency that hired me. And that's when I discovered the efficiency of the government through the efficiency, and this was the innovation program, right? So I was 6 layers deep innovating, and I signed a non-disclosure agreement with the federal government. So I'm not going to talk about what the innovation was that I did, but I could tell you that I did all the heavy lifting, and that I was 6 layers deep in this whole thing. So why am I talking about this? I've completely gotten off the subject, and I'm talking about myself, and I'm becoming self-invested. I'm trying to say self-invested and not ego-invested, because I'm trying to get rid of all of those Freudian terms in my.
We were on roads to Damascus.
We were on roads to Damascus. Yes, and I was talking about the third way. And that was a great note that she just gave me, because my point that I was trying to make is that the dichotomy, the switching sides, what's implicit in that idea is that there are two sides, which is the title of the show today. Okay, more than two choices. The fact that you're only given two choices, whether or not it's Labor and Tory, or conservative and liberal, or Republican or Democrat, or whatever it is, the fact that you're only being given two choices is evidence. If you're using the Parmenides, what is kind of idea, that is the evidence that you're in a mind control matrix, okay? And the matrix isn't something that's invisible and imaginary and it doesn't exist. The matrix is a mental state, okay, that makes you believe that your reality is based on the fact that you only have two choices. You can only do Republican or Democrat. And this is the way that we're going to get ourselves out of this. So as much as I love Mike Cernovich, and I love Courtney Turner, and I love all of my friends out there, I love Curtis, and I love Matt Arrett, okay? There's more than two ways to do this. And what this guy James Burnham would have you think is that there's three ways, okay? Because ultimately that's the synthesis. You've got the thesis, the antithesis, you got the synthesis, and that's where they want you to go. The reason that the reason the communists and the capitalists exist is because what they want you to do is when you get really frustrated, you're going to settle for the technocrats. And that's where this is going. And we don't have, we need to break out of this mind control matrix where we think that we only have three choices, that we only have socialism or capitalism or technocracy. No, we human beings, if we grab onto, Matthew calls it a celebration of the beautiful, and he quotes Schiller, and Richard Grove wants to call it critical thinking, and people think that if you do the trivium that you'll get there because it's this non-secular way of approaching critical thinking. My thesis for my book is that critical thinking is logos, and that the whole idea of Jesus being logos incarnate has been inverted in some way, and we keep thinking of the human being as being the logos instead of the logos being the human being who's incarnated from God. It's an inversion, and if we think about it that way, then we have an infinite number of opportunities to be able to change our lives, to be able to change the situation that we're in. But we're not going to get there unless we have a major mindset change. And I had the mindset change when I went out and I filled out the form and I unregistered to vote. Now, there are other things that we can do. There's other things that we can do besides voting. Besides trying to fix the government. We can try to fix the economy. Now, people will say, oh, the economy, that's something that the government controls and it's in the Constitution. Well, the government stopped controlling it in 1913. The government stopped controlling the economy when the Congress I'm looking for the right word. When the Congress let go of their responsibilities for the monetary supply of the United States of America, and they gave it to the Federal Reserve, which is not federal and is not a reserve. So, maybe, it's great that they're talking about putting Ron Paul in as in the Department of Government Efficiency, but I would much rather see, Catherine Austin Fitts as as the Secretary of the Treasury. That would be good. Or who else? Ellen, who wrote Web of Debt? Ellen Brown, Secretary of the Treasury. That would be good. Nancy Spanis, Secretary of the Treasury. That'd be good. So there are different things that you can do as far as your mindset that we can do. Let's just say we can do besides voting. Okay. The third thing is the culture. And one of the things that I like to pound on over and over again, and I was talking to my wife about this morning, is that, people like Tim Pool define culture as like comic book movies or something. Like, I'm perplexed, when I hear these pop culture references, like pop culture is culture. The term that kind of stuck with me, and I this is a Clayton Christensen quote, and I have plenty of critiques of Clayton Christensen. I used to worship at the well of Clayton Christensen, and I thought that, his Harvard Business School way of looking at disruptive innovation was the only way that you could look at economy. I had my road to Damascus moment with economics when I started to figure out that people like Clayton Christensen and James Surowiecki and Malcolm Gladwell and who's the guy who wrote Good to Great? Jim Collins. They write these very convenient, and whoever wrote the book E-Boys, I can't remember his name. These guys write these very convenient theses and books, and they become college professors, and they they're all kind of elaborate cover stories for the fact that we have an oligarchy that's in control of the finance system. And if you doubt me, go watch a movie. You can watch it for free on YouTube called The Princes of the Yen by Dr. Richard Werner. Again, did a well-known academic. He did great work. He wrote a book of the same name, The Princes of Yen. I linked to it on the book section of the Duke Report. The movie you can find on the Duke Report. And he does a very eloquent job of kind of laying out the idea that markets are controlled. Like, to a large extent, they are psychological warfare that are being perpetrated on the population to make them believe certain things about economies. One of my big critique of Clayton Christensen is that, like the Marxists and the communists, he agrees that capitalism always results in a market that gets dominated to the point where there's no profit left in it, and he does a very good job of explaining that. But I think that that's only true in economies where power is allowed to become unlimited, where corporations, as Carol Quigley explains in his lecture, The Mythology of Democracy, wind up becoming these supernatural beings, which brings me to the idea of culture and supernatural beings. If culture, the definition of culture, according to Clayton Christensen, Harvard Business School, is the values and processes that an organization or a society use in order to maintain their direction, their status quo. And if we just think of culture as values and processes and stop thinking of it as kind of like these airy-fairy things like, oh, it's comic books or it's music. It's like, it is music, okay, but it's part of a bigger system of values and processes that are being used in order to move the society in a certain direction, right? And economics originally started out as a department at the University of Glasgow. What's his name? Adam Smith was a professor of moral philosophy at the University of Glasgow. So economics, people think that economics has to do with how money controls the world, and no, it's a philosophy that you need to have in order to apply to how you want to use money to control the world. And if you're an oligarch and you're using it for psychological warfare and personal gain, then you set up a debt-based system like we've got now. And as Matt Ehret points out, and Nancy Spanis points out, and all of the LaRouche's pointed out for decades, is that debt-based economies are only one way of setting up an economy. There's other ways that you could set up economies. And so, again, getting back to this dialectic of different arguments that are going back and forth, if people aren't thinking outside of this kind of linear construct of one way or the other of doing something, then we're not going to come up with any solutions. And that's why I think not voting is important, because I think that your mind is opened. And I'm sorry. I'm happy. I'll say this out loud, and I'll say it in public, and I'll say it loud. I want to be wrong about what I think is about to happen between today and inauguration. I want to be wrong that there isn't going to be a tremendous amount of violence, that there aren't going to be a bunch of innocent people who get killed, that there aren't going to be 50% of the people in the country who are incredibly disappointed to the point where they're going to do stupid things. I was woken up this morning to the idea that the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, may turn off the lights. So if the show stops in the next, if I get cut off, it's because the state of California wants to turn off the electricity on election day. Now, why they wanted to do that, there's people who say that there's supposed to be high winds and they're afraid of fires. I don't believe that those fires they blamed wind on fires being started that raged all over California 10 years ago or 12 years ago. There was a big lawsuit, and the public utilities had to pay out millions and millions of dollars in fines. Of course, the public utilities are owned by the public. So that just means the public had to pay more people to people who got disenfranchised by the fact that they claimed that they had bad maintenance and they had old transmission lines and blah, 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 blah. So who paid the money? The public utilities. So the public paid the money to the public for the problems that the public utilities had. In any case, my electricity might get turned off, and it's election day in California. So where am I going? I'm lost. Maybe I should look and see if I have any questions. Oh wait, I can see in the private chat that my producer wife brought up this book by Russell Brand. As long as we're talking about people who are, let's share this tab instead. Okay, so I don't know that you can kind of see this cover, but the Pied Piper of Hamelin, Russell Brand's Trickster Tales. And it's about a guy who leads a bunch of people on a merry path. And you can see that the illustrations here are really they're lovely. Just the kind of thing that you want to read to your small child, when you're at bedtime. Yeah, at bedtime, that would be just like the best thing to read your kid. All right, so now I'm going to go to comments. There we go. All right, here we go. Joe N. Seeking the name of a Woody Allen movie. Previously, you mentioned it, and I've also come across it, but not able to find anything online. Called Sybil or something like that. A strange film of his. There's a few Woody Allen films that are unavailable. I think that you're talking about Zelig. And Zelig is Woody Allen's version of Forrest Gump. One of the things that I noticed before I ever got into any of all of this stuff is that there are certain movies that come out in, I would call them micro genres. So one of my favorite movies is Fellini's 8½. But I only discovered that I really liked that movie after I realized that the movie All That Jazz by Bob Fosse, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, it may be my favorite movie of all time, is a copy of 8½, or it's his version. Let's just say it's the Bob Fosse interpretation of 8½. And then Woody Allen famously made Stardust Memories, which are all movies about a film director on the edge of a nervous breakdown and having an existential crisis. That's what those three movies are about. So there was a time several years ago when I actually did a film festival where I watched 8½, and then I watched All That Jazz, and then I watched Stardust Memories all on the same day. So I think it's Zelig. And I was desperately looking for Zelig a couple weeks ago because I was talking to my wife about it, and I couldn't find it. So if anybody out there can find Zelig, let us know. I mean, maybe it's out there on the dark web or on what do you call it, Pirate Bay or something. Whatever the kids are using nowadays. All right. So what else did I have in my notes? I wanted to talk about Carol Quigley. A little bit, and I wanted to talk about AI. Carol Quigley famously did this lecture called "The Mythology of American Democracy," and I'll go pull this up. Hang on a second. Let's do this. I'm just going to share this page, share this, and then I'm just going to go. There's a good website on Quigley that's called Carol Quigley, and it's 2 R's, 2 L's, carolquigley.net. And if you go on to lectures here, and you go down to 1972, you can find this, The Mythology of American Democracy. There's a, wait, it didn't update. There we go. The Mythology of American Democracy. And in this lecture that Quigley gave in 1972, and for people who don't know, Carol Quigley was Bill Clinton's history professor at the University of Georgetown, and probably had something to do with Bill Clinton becoming a Rhodes Scholar and was an insider with the Council on Foreign Relations. And their unofficial historian, I say unofficial because they gave him access to all of their records. And for about 20 years, he researched it. And then he wrote a tell-all called Tragedy and Hope, which we've talked about many times on this show. But in this lecture, The Mythology of American Democracy, he talks about how the fact that you only have a choice of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump right now is the tell, okay, that this thing is rigged, okay? Why didn't Ron Paul ever make it? Why didn't Tulsi Gabbard ever make it? Why didn't those people ever they didn't get tapped, right? Tapped is a skull and bones kind of term. They didn't get tapped because the oligarchs that run things decide who gets to run. And that's not a republic. That's not a democracy. That's a school play. That's an oligarchy that's pretending to be a republic. That's an oligarchy that's pretending to be a democracy. And the reason that they do this every 2 years or every 4 years is to keep you hypnotized into believing that you have a choice, when the only people that you're allowed to vote for are the people that they pick. So that's a problem. So Carol Quigley talks about this in this lecture, and Elon Musk. Here's what Elon had to say about this. Yes, I think it was yesterday. Here, I'll blow this up here.
If the Dems win this election, they will legalize enough illegals to turn the swing states, and everywhere will be like California. There will be no escape.
That is so insane.
This is the final. This is it. This is the last chance.
Has anybody tried
and
to
I
push
just want to
back?
Go out and vote. Vote like your life depends on it. Vote like your future depends on it, because it does. This is the last chance, man.
Okay. I'm sorry. I've heard this. I'm 67 years old. I've heard, you guys have all seen the videos. I've heard that this is the most important election of my lifetime, my entire life. My entire life. Ronald Reagan was supposed to fix everything. He brought us Iran-Contra. He got shot a couple of weeks after he became elected president. George Bush took control after that. It's like, Ronnie, go eat your jelly beans, okay? Jelly beans were like a big part of the Ronald Reagan legacy, right? Okay, not Iran-Contra, right? And so frankly, I just don't believe it. I'm going to go look at... Okay, Kate Gowan says, I came across a clip about the significance of Colorado election shenanigans. Colorado is the locus of the continuity of government in case of insurrections. Yeah, I mean, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Stephen Carter says, there will be a special cybersecurity exercise at the conference. Get this, the exercise is described as a large-scale interactive event. Yeah, there's going to be all kinds of stuff like this. And again, if you're paying attention to all of that stuff instead of the things that you can do, which is to start to think critically and when it's funny because I've been playing around with this. I'll show you this thing. I have it bookmarked. Share this tab. You guys will like this. All right. So this is this new weird thing. So everybody who watches me knows that I'm into GPT. Well, I've been playing with this notebook LM thing, which is Google's kind of version of ChatGPT. It's their AI thing. And one of the things that it does, and I posted a couple of these because I was doing a test to see whether or not people like this or not, or what their opinions were. But on any of these notebooks, what you can do is you can upload a document and it will turn it into a podcast. And what are those two people's name who do Redacted? It's like Natalie and somebody or other. Clayton and Natalie, they do Redacted. I'll play a couple minutes of this just so that you get a sense of it. It's pretty good, but if you listen to too many of them, they get really annoying. And I would expect that the Redacted people probably should seek some kind of remedy, because it seems like they've been completely ripped off. But here we go.
Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
You know, we love to really get into the weeds of some of these historical documents and lectures, and today's is no exception.
Yeah, we're going back in time a bit to 1972.
Back to the 70s.
To a lecture by Carol Quigley,
Now Carol Quigley.
professor of history at Georgetown University.
In Georgetown for 35 years.
And this is interesting. You know, Bill Clinton, in his presidential acceptance speech, actually thanked Quigley personally for his guidance. So
Wow.
this is a guy who clearly had some influence in high places.
So today we're going to be looking at this lecture, and specifically Quigley's ideas on the evolution of American democracy.
It's really fascinating stuff. He tackles some really big questions.
Yeah, like what really determines election outcomes? Are political parties truly democratic?
And how do things like weapons technology or even corporate structures impact the very fabric of a democracy?
So
All right, so if you guys, I'll look at the chat right now. If you want, I'll post that later as a podcast if you want. One of the things that's interesting about this process, this notebook LM thing, it does sound pretty good. If you listen to more than a couple of them, it's kind of like watching those Super Panavision 70s AI movies. The first time that you watch it, you're struck by how good it is, and then the third or the fourth time that you listen to the same thing, you're struck by how repetitive the programming is. How how the people keep saying fascinating or absolutely, or and they're kind of like finishing each other's sentences like an old married couple. Anyway, the thing about it is, though, that it usually gets something wrong. So, for example, in this, I was going to post this. The reason I didn't post it is because the AI gets confused, and there's a section of the lecture where Quigley kind of switches gears in the middle of the lecture and talks about how because Quigley was obsessed with conspiracy theorists. He was obsessed with Gary Allen and this guy named Skuzin, who wrote books, who he claimed plagiarized them. He claimed that they were plagiarized. He was referenced in those books. Like, they didn't say, we did this original research. We said, based on this research by Carol Quigley. So it's hard to really justify the fact that Quigley thinks that he was plagiarized. That said, he talks about it in the middle of the speech, and then the AI kind of interpreted that incorrectly and puts it in the middle of the speech. The thing is about these AI renderings is that there's not a real easy way to go in and just fix it. You really have to go in and change your prompt and then render the whole thing over again. And you may get a 22-minute version of it the first time. Then you rewrite the prompt and give it to you. You rewrite the prompt, do the process again. And each time you do this, you have to wait for the thing to be processed. Then you have to listen to the whole thing. Then you have to rewrite the prompt. Then you have to listen to the whole thing again. The second time that it spits out a podcast, it's 12 minutes long. It's like, well, where did the other 10 minutes go? It's like you have no idea. It's kind of like you roll the dice every time you do it. And, every third time you may get something that you think is valuable. But in the meantime, you've listened to the same thing over and over and over again so many times that you're just sick of the two hosts and the way that they talk. So anyway, I thought that you guys would be interested because it is a curious thing. And like I said, I've just been kind of throwing all of my books in here to see what they come up with. Survival of the Wisest is like another example of, it's a book that was written by Jonas Salk, and because it assumes his voice in the book, then what it does, what the AI will do is that it'll assume that whatever Jonas Salk said is a good idea, and then it starts talking about how good it is for humanity. And so I don't really want to kind of share these things with people because without the critique. Now, one thing that I have been thinking about doing is that if I could take Jay Dyer's critique of Jonas Salk and then add it in here, that would be the next thing that I would do, is take a transcript of Jay Dyer criticizing Jonas Salk, combine it with the book, and then put it in with the podcast to see what the podcast comes up with. But I'll give you a couple of minutes of this too.
All right. Get ready to dive deep today, folks.
Oh, yeah.
We're taking a look at Jonas Salk's Survival of the Wisest.
I think it's a good one.
We've got excerpts from the book. We've got some charts here that really make you think.
Digital aids always help.
To really kind of unpack his ideas about where we're headed as a species.
That's right.
So buckle up because this is...
yeah, this one's a little bit mind-blowing.
It gets pretty wild.
It really does.
One of the things that Salk does is he paints this really kind of fascinating picture of how human values and how we act, how we behave, might actually have to shift as we move into this new era.
And he does it using a tool that I never would have expected.
What's that?
The sigmoid curve.
Okay, the sigmoid curve. Yeah, I'm seeing that here in the charts.
Yeah.
And it's this S-shaped curve. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
But they use it to map out all kinds of growth patterns.
All kinds of things, yeah.
And we're not just talking about humans here.
No.
I mean, this is everything from fruit flies to yeast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm even seeing examples of sheep.
Oh, wow.
So it really does seem to apply across the board.
Yeah, it's a...
So you get the idea. And like I said, it's cool and it's creepy all at the same time. It's cool and it's really uncanny valley, right? It gets to the point where you start to think, okay, this is a real thing. But when they say that they're looking at a chart and you know that there is no chart and it's just a computer pretending like it's got a chart, then it starts to get kind of weird. And like I said, I've posted a couple of them, but I've listened to them. I've listened to dozens of them at this point. And again, I'm just trying to benchmark them. I've read many of these books, so I know what the book is about. And when I listen to them describe it, they'll get like 98% of it right, and then there'll be one thing in there that's so wrong that it's like, no, I'm not gonna share this with anybody. Anyway, all right. So Stephen Carter, wrapping up. If you got any questions, fire them off now because when I get done with these two, I'm probably just gonna say hasta la vista, unless you guys have something else that you'd like me to talk about. Stephen Carter says, the Duke Report today and tomorrow out of Georgia is a nationwide tabletop simulation on cyber hacking and critical infrastructure. Interesting timing to choose. Yeah, yeah, right. Weren't there, again, is turning off the power in California? California is like one of the last states that reports, right? So if there's a giant power outage before California reports the results of the election, would that be a convenient way for everybody to say goodnight and not have to go until 3 o'clock in the morning? Because, they turned California. Gavin Newsom turned off California. They have electronic voting machines, so they turned all the power off in the state. Yeah, that would be real convenient, right? That would be another reason for paper ballots, right? In any case, nationwide tabletop situation like Event 203 or whatever that Bill Gates thing was. Yeah, maybe. And then he follows up by saying similar to the pandemic. Yeah, Event 203. Or, having exercises on 9/11. They were having exercises on 9/11. Did you know that Tojo, the head military guy in Japan during World War II, that Japan was having military exercises the day that 30 Seconds Over Tokyo happened, that the Hornet launched 16 B-25 bombers against Japan, and that at one point one of the B-25 bombers came up next to Tojo while he was flying from one place to another, and he knew that they were having those exercises, and he remarked to one of the staff officers that his staff had done a really good job of simulating the American bombers. So you got to wonder whether or not this is just like a trope. This is a Venetian. I'll bring it back to Venice. This is a Venetian trope. Yeah, we'll tell everybody we're having an exercise that day. And as you guys have heard me talk about earlier, Robert Edward Grant claimed in January of 2022 on a Zoom call that I watched that he had broken public key encryption, that he had come up with a geometric solution to public key encryption, and for people who don't understand technology, that just basically means that the way that encryption works on the internet is and always has had a back door. So all of this nonsense about hackers and people who have figured out a way to, sneak in through the back door and trick people and stuff, like they don't even need to do that. The intelligence agencies don't even need to do that. They have a skeleton key, like Houdini. It's a good book, by the way. I'm reading this book, Harry Houdini. I highly recommend this book. Houdini was working for American and British intelligence and spying on the Russians and the Germans before World War I. This book is fascinating. His sponsor in Great Britain turns out to be Lord Northcliffe. The same guy who wound up, I've talked about as far as the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. So, and the one of the original founders of the Tavistock Institute, and if you go to the Duke Report and check out a story that I posted a couple of days ago. Let me see if I can go find it. Yeah, here we go. Let's share this instead. This story. Which is an AI Hitler Tavistock connection. I used AI in order to create one of these podcasts that, again, it took me 2 or 3 tries to get a good one, but here, I'll give you a taste. It's always fascinating. Unfortunately, I found out from David Hillman that fascinating means something very different from what we think fascinating means. I'm not going to share it here. But anyway, so if you go and you check out this AI Hitler Tavistock connection, so if Matt Arrett is correct, then Hitler was groomed at Tavistock in 1910 before World War I. And so this is like 5 years after Harry Houdini is hanging out with Northcliffe. So I don't know, all these things are getting closer to connecting. But again, I'm just looking at what is. I'm trying to apply the Parmenides, George Webb, it's all in the metadata principle, and trying to connect the dots here. And with that, Arthur Stone says The Merchant of Venice. There's a couple of other ones too. Again, I highly recommend for anybody who's confused about what's going on, if you really want to take a giant step back, a deep breath, I created it. It took me weeks, several weeks, in order to create. Here we go. The Palmerston Zoo podcast. It's 9 episodes. The first 2 are free, and it goes over the Venetian takeover of Great Britain. It takes over how the Venetians replaced the British oligarchy, how they created what they called young societies all over the world and created revolutions. All the 1848 revolutions. There was somebody from Great Britain listened to this and was commenting a couple of days ago. This is somebody who's British. Okay, so I have to imagine that, and he seems like a sharp cookie. that he had never heard of the Gordon riots. The Gordon riots were the dress rehearsal for the storming of the Bastille. We don't learn when we learn about the French Revolution that the English Parliament was effectively replaced a couple of months before the storming of the Bastille happened. Like I was never taught that. I learned that when I was going through this entire Palmerston Zoo process. We don't learn that the British, in all likelihood, carried out the assassination of many American presidents, including Abraham Lincoln, and McKinley, and a few other ones. Anton Chaikin has written a whole book on that one. Anton Chaikin does the Palmerston Zoo episode 6. He wrote it, and then how they flipped the Ottoman Empire. And World War I is the most fascinating part of this thing because the British got now these people are all cousins, right? King Edward VII and Wilhelm II and Tsar Nicholas. They're all related to each other. So Edward convinces Nicholas that he should come into World War I on the side of the British. And he promises him that if he does, that when they conquer the Ottoman Empire, who are allied with the Germans and the Austrians in World War I, that the Russians can have Turkey, which means that they can get to the Dardanelles, which means that they can have a warm water fleet, which is something that the Russians have historically always wanted. Well, the British promised Nicholas Tsar Nicholas II, they promised him that he could have Turkey. So they needed Russia to win. They needed Russia to help them win World War I, but they needed to not have the Tsar make it to the end. So they needed Russia to win, but without the Tsar, because they didn't want to fulfill the promise. And so Tsar Nicholas II, right? Nicholas didn't make it to the end of the Tsar didn't make it to the end of the war. He was overthrown before the end of the war and then killed. And he and his family were shot, and their bodies were thrown in the bottom of a mine shaft. And the person in charge of the Russian military at that point was Leon Trotsky, who was working for the British. And when the Russians found out that he was working for the British, then he had to flee Russia, which is, again, these are things that we don't get told in school. And if you listen to the Palmerston Zoo, it will get explained to you how all of this stuff happened. So for members of the Duke Report, you have access to this podcast. And if you want to get the information, but you don't have the $5 a month to deal with it, you can go listen to the 1994 bad VHS copy of it with missing audio. And I won't begrudge you because I think it's really important for people to know this stuff. So with that, I am going to take this thing off. And I guess if I was better prepared, I would have a video to go out with. But I don't today. So I'm just going to tell everybody, be safe out there. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know whether or not there's going to be a winner announced. I could happily be wrong. I could happily be wrong. If Donald Trump wins overwhelmingly, California gets flipped, whatever happens, and Ron Paul and Elon Musk come in and fix the broken government, that would be great. I have little hope for anybody in Gaza right now, and my heart goes out to those people because, somebody said Salk was a poser. I think that many of these scientists are posers. I think that they're just fake and gay. In any case, I'm going to say goodbye, and I will see you guys all next Tuesday, and maybe George will come back because he'll think, oh, Peter is right, or maybe Peter will be wrong, and Peter could say, oh, I'm wrong, George, you were right. This election is the most important one of our lifetime, and I was I was wrong. But in any case, I'll see you guys later. And thanks for joining me. Talk to you later. Bye.